Have limited storage on my phone, and I wasn't able to figure out how to use my camera at the moment, having some trouble with it. So this is a second approach, but I finished up just a minute ago with the Paleolithic era. So let me move a little bit further ahead. Women always kind of work just under the surface. They could assert themselves in certain ways, but they couldn't be open about it as we see civilizations develop. Now, one way they could do this was during the Roman Empire era, when women who had money, and these are women with money, they would join these mystery cults. It was a way for them to express themselves. Now, one of these mystery cults wound up becoming the religion of Christianity. And that takes me to something else I want to share with you about patriarchy and how it came into being the way it is even today. And that goes back to the days of Alexander the great Macedonian war hero and general and conqueror. And when he died, he had a vast empire, and his generals took a piece of each of these parts of his empire, and they spread Greek thought. Now, out of Greek thought comes a very interesting story I'll share with you, and hopefully I can get through this without it turning off, running out of space. But Aristotle, you've heard of the philosopher Aristotle. Now, first of all, Aristotle and Plato, their academy was like on the outskirts of town of Athens. The people who ruled Athens were not happy about what they were teaching the young people of Athens, which was essentially critical thinking skills, something that you really need. But they didn't want to interrupt the status quo. But Aristotle was also the tutor and teacher of Alexander the Great when he was growing up. And this is one of the main things that he talked about. He had this idea called the one-sex theory. And what that meant was that there was just one sex. Everybody was a male, but what we call women or females are defective males. Now, if that had just stayed in Athens or in Greece, okay, but it spread all over the world thanks to our buddy Alexander the Great. And so we have this rise of Western culture via Greek thought and Christianity, and eventually an imperial cult around the figure of Jesus Christ. Early Christianity, before that era, is much more compassionate and understanding and welcoming of all people, which is why it appealed to these rich women. However, once the empire gets hold of it and makes it the official religion, well, you've got that Greek thought, you've got this idea of patriarchy, the idea of any woman being a leader or being in a leadership role of the church was just thrown out completely. Any writings by women during the early Christian era were not included in the New Testament. So here's where the roots are. Aristotle, Constantine the Great, and then it just spreads and it becomes common knowledge by the time you get into the early medieval period. And this idea of women being defective males and therefore not the same level or quality as a man is something that goes on into the Renaissance. Now, at that point, science has come along, you've got the Enlightenment after that, and educated people know the deal about Aristotle's theory, but most people aren't educated. And so this remained in our Western culture throughout the years following the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and even to this day. But the problem is, patriarchy hurts men and women because it puts a burden on both. Burden on the man that he's got to be the do-all and end-all and totally responsible. For example, up until the 19th century, even the early 20th century, women were considered the property of their fathers or their husbands or their uncles. And if you were unprotected, that made